Welcome to MidLIFE Matters, where we celebrate women's wisdom and wit. I'm Georgianne Lucier, your host, and I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, Jane Fisher. She is Wallingford's former library director, who is starting a third professional chapter, and she is now a certified senior advisor. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Oh, this is going to be wonderful. And you recently retired from the Wallingford Library after 10 years.
Right.
And a friend described it as rewirement, right? Starting something new.
Exactly. So I gave 6 weeks notice and let the library board know that I was leaving to embark on a new career. So in some ways it doesn't feel so much like a retirement as a rewirement to me.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. And how did you decide on what you plan to do next?
So I had been thinking about it for a while. I enjoyed every minute of my career at the Wallingford Public Library, but felt like I had one more career in me and wanted to do something different. I previously was a retirement community administrator and a nursing home administrator. I've always been really drawn to working with older adults, so I kind of thought I might do something, a return to that field. And I was actually reading a book titled, I have it here, Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff. This author was talking about how to help older adults downsize to help them prepare for a move into senior retirement living. And he said, I helped a few folks do this and I realized I didn't do such a great job. I wished I had known there were services that do that. And that made me think, well, that's interesting. I might like that kind of opportunity.
Great.
And so from there started looking at companies and opening our own company that helps seniors choose retirement community options.
And I know you shared that, as with your first and second career, building relationships is very key.
Absolutely. So what we're going to be doing, what we are doing in the new business, connecting with older adults and often their adult children who are considering a move out of the family home into assisted living, independent living, or memory care, and finding out exactly what their needs are. Do they have health care needs? What amenities do they want? What's their budget? So that we can then recommend not a gigantic list of options, but a finely tailored list of options, and then take them on tours of these communities. And it's nice for us because the service we provide is free for our clients, so that the communities would pay for our services after a successful move-in. Okay. So we can spend ample time really building relationships and finding the right next home for people.
Great. And so I mentioned you're a certified senior advisor. What's involved in getting that certification?
So the company that we opened, which is a franchise business, and they're nationally around the country, has very high standards for people who open an office with their name, which is great because that's what we wanted. One of the requirements is that their business owners become certified senior advisors. Okay. What that meant for us is we had to study a great deal of material and take a test to prove that we've mastered the material. And it ranged from the basics of aging to senior housing to seniors and healthcare issues to investments and taxes and health insurance coverage, ethics of working with older adults. So really a pretty wide range of topics, which we had to become proficient in and test in, and then we'll be required to earn continuing education units to maintain the certification.
So when you talk about building relationships, it sounds like you're going to have certainly your clients, their family members, whoever's central to the decisions, but also all of these professionals, I would imagine realtors,
right,
tax attorneys, accountants, some of just what you've mentioned. I would imagine even maybe moving companies and everything that could be involved as you talk about insurance. I mean, it's quite a wide range where you need to be informed about terminology, practices, laws,
Yeah,
right?
legal
And
issues.
Connecticut's a highly regulated
It is.
state.
It is. And in many ways, that's a positive thing
Mm-hmm.
for our older adults because I think it gives them some protection and some safety. But we do want, so while our specialty is referring people for assisted living, memory care, and independent living, we really want to be a one-stop shop for the clients that we're working with as well as their children so that we can help them find all those services you just mentioned and give them referrals that we vetted. We don't want to just, give them a list of names that we found on the internet. We
Right.
want to give them folks that we know from our partners are qualified to give good service.
And what types of things do you anticipate or are you finding people have in the way of preferences, concerns, et cetera? Let's say going to, a new home that might be part of a continuum of care or community.
Right, right. So it's been really interesting to hear about the individual needs and wants that people have. So if they have healthcare needs, they want to be sure that the community is able to help them with those needs. It can be basic. They might need just some help getting up and showered and dressed in the morning. Some people need much more care than that. But the nice thing about these assisted living communities is that it's very discreet. It's like living in some ways in a fancy hotel, but then you're getting some care when you need it. But you're having lovely meals in the dining room and receiving housekeeping and laundry services right in the apartment. Other people are more interested in what the social life is like at the communities. So people will say, I've been a lifelong bridge player and I want to play bridge. Or other people are really artsy and they want to be sure that there's artistic folks who live there and activities that let them continue with their inner artist. Some folks are interested in book discussion groups and more intellectual stimulation. They want to go someplace where they're sure there are lectures. Some people, the food really matters.
Okay.
They're foodies and they
Yep.
want to continue to enjoy good food in the dining room. And then for all people, I think that their budget comes into effect. So
Sure.
how much money do they have? And they want to be sure their money lasts for the rest of their lives. People really are looking to age in place in these communities and hope to stay there for the rest of their lives. So we want to be sure that we're recommending communities that are in the right price point for people too.
And we also discussed briefly there can be cultural issues, right?
Right,
Someone
right.
might be deeply religious.
Right. Somebody might say, well, I don't want to be the only Jewish person in a community that I go to, or I want to be sure I can get to Sunday Mass every week. Do you provide the transportation or bring some services into the community? We are actually talking with some gay folks who are interested in making a move, and they feel they want to be in a place that's open and open-minded so that they feel
Absolutely.
welcome. Yeah.
Well, certainly good luck with all of that. It sounds like a great third chapter.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. I feel so fortunate to have a third chapter in the works.
Yes, that's nice.
Yeah.
Keep you young. And your first career you've mentioned was in healthcare administration. And let's talk about what you enjoyed most about that job and then your decision to become a librarian, which you worked in New York City prior to coming to Wallingford.
Right, right. So I was a healthcare administrator. My bachelor's degree is in healthcare administration. I've always been interested in healthcare. My parents, my mom was a medical technologist and my father was a biomedical engineer. So I grew up in kind of a science and healthcare home. So I've always gravitated toward that. Even worked as a home health aide through college. So it was kind of a logical career for me in some ways, being always interested in healthcare in the United States. And I enjoyed the work deeply. What I loved most about it is that I always worked with older adults, and it's a population that I've been drawn to. I find older adults have such, I know it sounds cliche, but such wisdom and stories to share. I was always the kid who would be, hanging around with the grandparents rather than playing with the other kids outside, because I've just always enjoyed my relationships with older adults.
So what was the setting you were in when you had that first career?
So I first became a nursing home administrator, And I did that for a couple of years, and then I went to work in retirement communities, so the communities that have a full spectrum of care, from independent living through skilled nursing facilities. Yeah, yeah.
Then we became Jane the librarian.
I did. So talk about a career change.
Yep.
While I enjoyed my work in retirement communities, I felt like I wanted to make a change. I wanted to work with in more of a nonprofit setting. I've always been a reader. I was drawn to the role of public libraries helping children become good readers, though I was never a children's librarian, and between you and me, I wouldn't have the fortitude to be a children's librarian, but it is kind of what got me interested in the profession, knowing that good reading skills make for successful adults. So I went to graduate school in the Midwest, and at the time, the New York Public Library was hiring, and so I got my degree. I actually took a pit stop in Guatemala to study Spanish for a little while, got my degree, and then I went to work at the New York Public Library, and I worked there for 11 years. Mostly in the branch systems in different neighborhoods. Washington Heights, I worked in Harlem, I worked in the Upper West Side, I worked in the Upper East Side, and then I had a system-wide job at the New York Public Library. So it was a really special place for me. Loved living in New York City. At some point while I was there, I started to find myself wanting to have a suburban life. So I moved to New Jersey, and I got a car, and I got a dog, and worked as a library director in New Jersey for a number of years. And then there was this opportunity in Wallingford, which was the town where I lived until I was 15. My parents had both come back to Wallingford. We all know Wallingford has a pretty amazing public library, so I applied for that position and was just over the moon happy to come back to Wallingford and be the library director here.
And I've read a couple of recent articles about you. They may have big splashes. You were leaving, not necessarily retiring, but leaving after 10 years. And so just what were a couple of notable accomplishments that you're particularly proud of? And
Well, we talked about building relationships being something that's important to me. So I think that connecting with the community and expanding on the really great outreach and partnerships program that was in place when I came here was really a thrill for me. So I was able to coordinate the Wallingford Community Resource Alliance for a number of years, which I thoroughly enjoyed. We did some really special programming at the Wallingford Public Library. One Book, One Wallingford being one of them. I always wanted to work in a library that had a community reads program, so I was just thrilled when that got off the ground. And then I think we transitioned away from a library that was all about transactions into one that was more about relationships. We did away with overdue fines, which was great and so terrific for the community to get rid of that sort of niggling aspect about libraries. We also started programs that were really what the community wanted. We listened to the community and we programmed accordingly. So that was really special. And then we have the Collaboratory, the big makerspace digital media lab co-working space. And I would say that my colleagues at the library were really the brain power behind putting in place what the community wanted. But I think that I helped initiate the conversations about that, as well as our diversity, equity, and inclusion work. The colleagues at the library ran with it, but it was something that the board and I felt was really important for this community.
Did you do a listening tour or something? How did you find out what the community wanted?
So for the Collaboratory, I think that that's where we put so much effort into learning what the community wanted. We started with a big brainstorming session with the staff to get some ideas going. And then what we did after that is we actually called or emailed or visited the maker spaces, the hacker spaces, the collaborative spaces, not just in Connecticut, but around the country. And we asked a lot of questions like, what did you offer that was like over the top everybody loved? What did you offer that really didn't pan out and might not want? What do you wish you could have that you didn't have or couldn't afford?
Right.
And so that helped us really plan for what to offer. Yeah.
So, and speaking about books and so forth and reading, tell me about these other books that you have here that you brought with you.
So I, during the pandemic, was so fortunate to get to become a facilitator for guided autobiography. So I love the fact that I think everybody has a story to tell, and that with a little facilitation, people can recall their memories and create vignettes or stories about their lives. So this is a book titled Telling the Story of Life Through Guided Autobiography Groups, and it's by Jim Barron, who was at USC and really kind of codified this program to teach people how to facilitate guided autobiography workshops. So I got that certification during COVID and have led some 8-session workshops about guided autobiography. And I did one at right here in town at Ashlar Village, and I did one at the library, and hope to do them again. A group of 6 or 8 individuals who share not only write their stories, but share them with the group, which is so meaningful and develops such strong bonds and connections.
Well, and I believe that would really build a base for you to work on when you have your relationships with your clients, because you're probably thinking of these stories, and it's a rich development experience.
Yeah.
So what was involved in getting certified?
So the workshops were offered by the Guided Autobiography Group, which is they're really doing it now around the country. So I was able to do it on Zoom it during COVID, and we had people from the East Coast, the West Coast, some from Great Britain, some from New Zealand. Some of them were up in the middle of the night to take the workshops. So we had to participate as a participant as well as go through the training on how to facilitate the groups, because they feel that you need to do it before you can facilitate it.
Wonderful. Yeah. So you wrote your own story.
So I did.
To this point.
Yeah. It was great.
And I would imagine that helped you with your thinking about what to do next.
Definitely.
Right? Because here you are, you took advantage of online learning during COVID. Yep. You're still in your library director role.
Right.
But I'm sure these little nuggets are floating around.
Yeah.
And then as you wrote your own story.
Right. And so we write it in weekly chunks. So there's a theme every week. And it's not so much about, I was born in 1960. It was, thinking about themes and then writing on a theme and writing a couple of pages, but then reading aloud to your other participants a couple, 2, maybe 3 pages that you fine tune. And that reading aloud of your story and being heard by others is so powerful.
And I'm in a book group, as a number of my friends are, and one woman said to me, well, book groups are very, there's an intimacy involved or a trust level because you're reflecting on what you've read, relating to yourself, perhaps, experiences, asking questions. And I would imagine that a lot of trust has to be built among the group members to share.
It does. And so we don't start out with the most intimate topics.
Right.
We start out with something called branching points, which is where in your life, where has your life branched and why might that have happened?
Nice.
So the Barron Center really does a nice job with the training.
Great.
So I was thrilled with that.
And you have this book.
So this is a book called You, the Story, A Writer's Guide to Craft Through Memory. Touching for me to receive a gift that's just like right up my alley. And then the last book I brought, What We Keep. 150 people share the one object that brings them joy, magic, and meaning. So one of the other workshops that I like to lead is a woman who has a series called Show and Tales, and so I've purchased use of her materials. And what I can do is to offer, it's basically like show and tell for grown-ups, where people talk about an object. Sometimes it's a photo of the object that is really meaningful to them. So again, you imagine you're in a group, and it could be in a bar, it could be in a salon, it could be at the library, and you're sharing one thing or one photo about your life. And it's another great way to develop connections, which is really special.
So can you think of any examples of things that people have, that were revealed in the book or whatever that people chose?
So sometimes it's not always like a an expensive piece of jewelry. Sometimes it can be a tchotchke from a grandmother. It can be a famous a plate, a favorite plate. I have my grandmother's potato salad bowl, which I really love. I also have this issue of National Geographic from the 70s where my grandmother, who was kind of a bold woman, went and sat in front of a camera not knowing what they were taking pictures of. And a few months later, her pictures in National Geographic while she's on vacation, sort of posing, and it's really sweet. Yeah. So that's one of the things I share when we do show and tell.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And so that's very diverse. And now we talk about those strong bonds that women can form, and I think we have a little edge over, we in general, have a little edge over men in general, in that culturally and just maybe how we're wired, tend to be good at keeping relationships, good friends. I know a photo that you shared was one of your friends probably from when you were in
high school.
Yeah, before you left Wallingford at 15, right? And it sounds like your grandmother was a role model for you.
So I was so blessed to grow up with 4 grandparents, and my grandmothers, particularly my mother's mother, was lived nearby. We would ride our bikes to her house. My brother and I, we had our own room there so that we could sleep over when we wanted to. And so, yeah, grandmothers and friends. I have a best friend who is a psychologist, which, you know, how handy to have somebody who's a psychologist to share things with. And she doesn't therapize me, but you know, she does always have great advice.
Good.
So that's been really nice.
And in your career, I would imagine, I mean, I tend to think of libraries traditionally heavily staffed by women.
Yep, that's true. Women have been great leaders in the profession and in healthcare too. So one of my mentors is somebody who's also a psychologist and went on to be a healthcare administrator, and she mentored me in my early career there. So women have definitely played a mentoring role for me in some very positive ways.
Great. Yeah. And as we age, we can reflect on our own journey, as you did, I'm sure, as you went through the exercise you spoke about. And we talk about those branching out key decisions and influences. So thinking about your younger selves at some branching out point, whatever, of your choosing, what advice would you give yourself?
So I think I would tell myself to take some risks when I was young, you know, to be bold and take some risks, take some career risks. Those are the times to do them. To not hold back when I have opinions to share. I think that would be the advice I would give to my younger self. And then maybe as I got older, I would say, take risks, but it's never ever too early to start saving for retirement.
Okay.
So as I'm talking now with older adults, I'm seeing that those who were really good savers and started saving early have many more options, which is really nice for them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
So I have, I like to read poetry once in a while, and Mary Oliver is a poet I think is quite special. And one of the things she said, which I love, is, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?"
Beautiful.
And I think that's something special to think about. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being a guest. And please tune in to hear other fascinating women on future segments of Midlife Matters. I'm Georgianne Lucy, your host, and thank you for watching.